what are some tips and ideas to maximize your time during the event? Elizabeth, with your experience creating amazing networking relationships, what are some ideas that you might have for maximizing your time during the show? Let's start with you.
Sure. I think during the show, again, you really want to, now that you've kind of created a plan and you know kind of what you want to get out of the show, I think during the show, it's making sure that you actually follow that plan, but give yourself some flexibility as well. I think the biggest piece for me during the show is that if you see someone and you want to talk to them, go up and talk to them, because they may walk away and it's a big enough event where you may not see them again. So maximize that time. I think the other piece is, if again, kind of from a more practical perspective, is stay hydrated. I think that there's a lot of, again, so stay hydrated. You know, they do a great job of feeding us during the conference and providing snacks. But if you have a particular need or you love a snack, you know, make sure you bring it with you as well, so that you can make sure that you are your best self during those things. So those are just kind of a few practical ones.
Okay, that's really actually that's really great advice, is to stay hydrated, because these events can last a while and there is really so much to do, but make sure that you take care of yourself so that you can make sure that you maximize everything that you want to do and you're not out there, you know, dehydrated or worrying that, you know, it's too strenuous on yourself. Max, what are some ideas or some advice that you might give to people during the show to maximize their opportunity there?
Yeah, for during the show, I think I would really want to focus on this motif of challenging yourself, challenging oneself to step out of their comfort zone. And we talked about this a little bit during the preparation, but the three main parts of the event, finding a way to challenge yourself to ask questions in a session. Speakers love questions, and Elizabeth, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but it's so much better to answer questions than it is to just present. And so challenge yourself to ask questions to these speakers. In the expo hall, challenge yourself to talk to vendors that you don't know. Challenge yourself to introduce yourself to people who might be important to you. And then with networking, challenge yourself to introduce yourself to people of all types, institutional leaders, vendors, peers, anyone. Walk up, especially for these folks that are introverted, walk up, stick your hand out loud and proud, introduce yourself. And that's how you make the most, I think, out of the during the show event. The bigger you can grow your network, the more work you'll have to do when you get home, continuing these relationships and establishing yourself in the environment.
And I think, Max, picking up on your question, I love questions. I think that for me to sit there and talk for 50 minutes is not really my goal. My goal is to make sure to kind of meet the needs of the people who attend my session. And so trying to make that interactive and have them meet with each other is important. But also, if you really liked the presentation, or if you disagreed with it, or you have some other idea, talk to the speaker afterwards, right? So usually they try to get you out of the room because they have to flip the room, but go up, introduce yourself, make that connection. And I think that's a really important, as a presenter, I love that. That's real kind of good haptic feedback for me. So I would also encourage that as well.
That's actually really true. I think that as a speaker or as a presenter on any level, you can't really grow without feedback because you want to understand your audience. And that is gold right there. So I'm pretty sure, Elizabeth, you have experienced that many times over, where you get this feedback and you get these aha moments to be able to make sure that you understand your audience a little bit better. Gerry, what are some advice that you might have for people who are attending the show or during the show to make sure that they maximize the opportunities there?
So I've got a long list, but I don't know that I need to say it all. But the first one I'll share is to suspend your fear of missing out. You're not going to be able to do everything, and you're not going to be able to see everyone. And so if you can't see someone or you can't go to what you want to go to, you could devise a plan B about how you might make that happen at some other point, offline or later on after the conference. But I think that's just really important. And related to that, I'm going to just extend Elizabeth's comment about staying hydrated. And I think eating, resting, and exercising, and taking some time for yourself in the frenetic schedule is very, very important. Again, this is going back to kind of knowing who you are. I think that's really important. You know, here's another thing. I was a professor for a long time. Be on time. You know, it's you know, you're as a presenter, you're trying to get your mojo going, and the next thing you know, you spend 10 minutes letting people come into the room, and it's really off-putting. In the sense that it throws you a little bit off your game. It's not really off-putting, you know, professionally, but it's just, I think it's professional courtesy. So I think that's really critical. Um, During a conference, I always was an inveterate name tag reader, because this is expanding beyond the people you're looking out for, right? So Elizabeth said, you know, I want to meet that person because there's maybe going to be a job there, and I want to talk to the executive director or the assistant director for recruitment, whatever. But I think you never know who you may have missed in your scenario. And, you know, or it may be somebody who was from the same institution you were, but you're 20 years removed from that, but you want to go, you know, Ray, whoever. I think that's a really cool opportunity. Um, I think you need to make a commitment to yourself to spend at least part of an afternoon or a morning in the exhibit hall. Um, and I think when you go to the exhibit hall, I think the first thing that you need to do after you meet the exhibitors and our corporate partners is to thank them, because their dues and their applications and their fees subsidize the conference delegation fee. So I think it's important. That's one thing. But I think it's also about, I appreciate you being here and supporting us as an association and supporting me. I think that's absolutely critical. I'd say when you have that time delegated to going around the exhibit hall, a third of that time to gather your goodies, and then spend 100% of your time making new friends. I think that's, you know, I grew up in a time when the understanding and connections with corporate partners was maybe not as cordial as it is now. And I think that that's certainly a very important improvement in our association's business. So I think you know, making sure that you're out there. And again, you never know who you're going to run into for whatever, and you get this one idea that you weren't even looking for. Um, I'd say two other things. One, look for and anticipate the wow moments, because you're going to have them. And remember those, because there's something unique about this gathering of an incredibly large group of very talented people and professionals. So they're going to be there, and that wow moment may be as crazy as overhearing somebody talking about a conference presentation that you didn't think about in the same way, and you go, whoa, I hadn't thought about it that way. And so that's a little simple one, but sometimes you'll get inspired during the keynotes, or you'll meet someone who you are simpatico with, and that wow moment is, I just met somebody who's going to be in my life for the rest of my life. And I think that's incredibly important. It's happened to me a number of times. I like to call those simpatico moments. So I think that's really critical. And then the final thing is, it's also a matter of grace. You're going to meet people, you're going to meet a lot of people, and then you're going to see some of them afterwards. And I think the natural tendency is not to make a mistake when you're greeting them again. So if I see Elizabeth and I say hello, Max, okay, it's okay. You know, everybody knows that you're meeting lots of new people and they're going to give you grace. My point is that that gives you an opportunity to help you remember names. And knowing someone and being able to see them the next conference without having to jog your brain is powerful.
I'd like to pick up just a few things that Gerry was talking about with regards to the expo hall. I think that's where I spend the vast majority of my time. And so I'd love to use this time to provide some advice on how to make the most of it. I think there's sometimes an impression that vendors and exhibitors are there to get you. And they stand there and they're smiling at everybody that goes by. And I think it can be easy to think of them as this as a responsibility or them as a threat. They're trying to get something from you. But the truth is, vendors are there to be a partner. And we're proud to be there. We're excited to be there. And our main goal is to build relationships with the attendees, with the other vendors, the same way that y'all are building relationships with each other. We want to be a part of the environment. And a lot of our goal is to learn about your campus and your problems and your challenges. And so to that, I think as a vendor, I love when people are really honest and forthcoming with me. If you're not interested in what I have to tell you about, that's okay. Just say, hey, this isn't something that we're interested in, and move on. You can get your free thing, get your pen, right? You know, we're here to give you something. Maybe some vendors will have candy or a raffle or something. Nobody's going to be upset that you engage with that. But be honest with us so that we can continue building relationships with the group at large. The other thing is the opposite. If you're really excited about a product or a service that you're seeing in the expo hall, one of the best things that can happen as a vendor is for someone to have a really positive and excited moment and then bring back a larger group. And so use the expo hall as a repeat visiting experience. Come back with a group at large, be the presenter now of this product that you think is cool, share it with your colleagues, share it with your leadership. And that's the way to make the most out of it. And remember, at the core of it all, these vendors are here to support, to learn in the same way that y'all are.
And I think, Max, this is probably advice that Gerry gave me many, many years ago. But I remember, even if you're not in a decision-making position, still go and talk to the vendors, because one day you probably will be, right? And also, you're probably someone on the ground who is going to be, no offense to the executive directors out there, but they're not always using all the products that are being presented in the expo hall. So they do want to hear everyone's opinion. So I think even if you're like, I'm just a hall director, I'm just a whatever, that doesn't matter really in the expo hall. Go learn about what's available, talk to the vendors, tell them about your department, tell them about your institution, your students, and build that relationship.
I think that there are some things that if ACUHO-I continues into the 22nd century, that will still be boilerplate kinds of things. And so, I was taught that housing is about a three-legged stool. It's about people, it's about facilities, and it's about operations. Okay, and it's all in the context of students. And so, one of the things that technology will never be able to advance is that unbelievable one-to-one interaction that you have with a student. And at the conference, it's the one-to-one interaction with another person. The first rule of life is to pay attention. So when you are with someone, be with them. There's going to be 100 people running around, but I think, to your point about etiquette, Leo, I think having that eye contact with someone and being able to connect with them is very authentic.
So Gerry, I have a question for you. So if you have a staff member, let's say, and they come up to you and they say, I went to this presentation. The title and the subject of the presentation weren't what I expected. And so, it was a little bit dry. What advice would you give them about going to a presentation that maybe like halfway through they're just like, this isn't what I want it to be, or, this is, yeah. What advice would you give?
So that's a very, very good question, Elizabeth. I would say, first of all, maybe the second half of the presentation is going to be a completely different. There's two halves to a football game, right?
That's true.
And you got to have the winning.
Quarters.
You got to have the winning score at the end. So I think giving people a little bit of grace.
Yeah.
I think there's always something you can learn. And I would also say that probably your impatience with a potential presenter who isn't really meeting your needs is probably not as important as your professional courtesy to see it through. It may be that person's not having a good day, or grandma just died. I mean, you do not know.
That's right.
And everybody has a bad day.
This is true.
So I think that professional courtesy probably wins out. And quite frankly, if you feel in unfulfilled at the end, that's what the evaluation's for.
Absolutely.
You write a very frank and professional evaluation that, sorry, but the way this was written gave me a different impression, and I really was unintentionally misled, and but here are some suggestions about how it might be different. I always, don't just be the complainer, be the answer.
Yep.
Trying to use this as a mantra throughout the event. Have coffee with somebody, have lunch with somebody. Don't sit down at a table by yourself. If you are at a table with a group and you see someone wandering around, invite them to join you. I think ultimately we are all there to build our own communities, but we have a responsibility to invite people in to our communities as well.
If you have the privilege to meet someone who has traveled from a different country to come to this, I think, invite them in. This may be their first trip to the States, right? Also, you get to meet a cool friend who maybe lives in like South Africa or New Zealand or, Latin America or Canada, and so I think that it's really important. And this was some of the feedback that I heard from the group, was that they want to be a part of the association, and so just as you are representing yourself and the association, invite people in and kind of get that other perspective. So that's my plug on the international piece of things.
I would say that probably in terms of that kind of time, that your priority there should be you. And because otherwise, because it's scheduled that way, so you have that opportunity. And then this one just popped into my brain while we were talking, and it was kind of generated a little bit by what Max said about corporate partners in the exhibit hall. There are going to be times when you will be offered an opportunity to join your corporate partners for dinner. And it's a nice invitation, and you'll typically get a great meal out of it. But I would be sure, if you've never done it before, that you make sure what your institutional rules are regarding that invitation, because intention and outcome sometimes are very different things, and you unintentionally may get yourself in a little bit of hot water. So maybe it's important to find out what those rules are prior to departure, so that if indeed that invitation is extended, you know what your answer is. Yes, I would love to come. My schedule's open, or I'm sorry, but I have to politely decline because there are institutional policies that prohibit that.
So I think what we've gathered so far is to go into this event making sure that you have fun, meeting people that aren't really necessarily from around your area. They could be from out of state, from out of the country, different cultures, and it's really exciting, but always be mindful, as we discussed with Elizabeth, of etiquette, the people around you, and just open yourself up, and you'll just have that wow or aha moment that Gerry kind of alluded to earlier. So with that, join us for the next and final part where we'll be talking about how to follow up and maintain those connections after Campus Live.